if you are this person and you can read this book. It'll give you some helpful pointers on how to not die.
If you are this person, the book will read like a personal attack.
It was when I read it, because I read it on a plane flight to Dubai. I was just reading this like, wait a minute. I've done most of this stuff and it is not flatteringly depicted here. Yeah, it's a fun experience being called out this hard. Welcome back to the Unreal Podcast. In its first, and in my, if I say that I will definitely get fired opinion, for most podcasts on transgressive fiction, internet culture, and everything from 4chan. That's actually good. And today, we've got something that's pretty good, at least in my opinion. But the thing is, I'm told that my opinion is not, in fact, objective. So I've got a guy who always disagrees with me, so we can have some interesting conversation. What we're talking about today is Bright Lights, Big City by Jay McInerney. You may have heard of it. If you haven't, that's okay. It's sort of like the book that Less Than Zero could have been if somebody else who wasn't Bret Easton Ellis wrote Less Than Zero. It's about this guy. He's not named because the book is in second person. You're that guy. And you live in New York in the 80s. You have a crippling crack addiction. They call it cocaine. You have a high-flying corporate job. And this book is your life falling apart over the course of 1 week. And oh boy, does it fall apart in some fun and deadly ways. So yeah, as always, I am your host, L.A. Labuschagne. I've written 2 books myself, and if you want to see how I live on a daily basis, this book is a fairly accurate description. And as always, I am joined by something to drink. Today, it's a cup of chai tea, no alcohol involved. Namely, I was pounding beer in the university restaurant for the past 4 hours now, and I realized I kind of need to sober up, or I will fail tomorrow's exam. Which, sacrifices have to be made, but also trying to cum laude the degree here, so you know. And I'd say that chai tea pairs well with a lot of stuff, but, frankly, this is like the first time I've ever made it myself, and I'm not convinced about it. Fortunately, I have James Krake here, and he's even less convinced than I am. Welcome back to the podcast, bro.
Thanks. Personally, I'm more about the cheap, dime-cent black tea bags you can get from Lipton. I'm not fancy at all with tea. But yeah, I'm a science fiction author. You can find my book Faceless on Amazon, or you can track down my web novels if you want web novels.
If you want web novels, they're there. I'd recommend them because I know James. But speaking of, man, you're in America. Do you have a tea kettle, or you just, throw the water, the tea bag in a cup and then microwave it? How do you make tea?
I don't microwave it. So if I were to drink tea more often, I would have an electric tea kettle. Currently, I put water into a pot and boil it.
That is somehow weirder. Do you boil the tea in the pot, or do you have boil the hot water in the pot and then separately make tea?
Put tea bag in the cup, pour boiling water into the cup.
That must take 15 minutes, man.
Get a better oven.
I just have an electric kettle.
Well, like I said, I don't drink tea that often. I'm normally drinking beer or energy drinks.
Fair enough. So yeah, Bright Lights, Big City. I don't think they drink tea in that book either. What were your first impressions of this?
So, it opens with a cold open in 2 a.m. when he's riding high on cocaine, trying to talk to a girl he can't really decide whether he wants to be with them or if it's just the buzz of the cocaine.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the opening, right?
That is the opening. I think it was 6 a.m., not 2 a.m., but
Oh yeah, it was even earlier. I've been there, not exactly with the cocaine, although I have hung out with people that do cocaine, and personally, that's just kind of I don't do stimulants. I don't get why you do that. Alcohol's fine for me, but I've definitely been, drunk off my ass talking to people as the sun's coming up, and it being in second person does kind of drag you into, resonating with the memories and comparing them, and it does feel genuine to the point where I'm pretty sure the author is just picking from his personal memories, and I had a feeling about that throughout the entire book.
Yeah, no, McInerney is 100% doing that. He was part of this literary movement in the 80s and 90s called the Brat Pack, which was him, Bret Easton Ellis, the short one, Donna Tartt, and a couple of others. And they legit did live like this. And so, like, Bright Lights, Big City is Jay basically picking the highlights, or, well, okay, 6 a.m. beer talk, lowlights of his life.
Like, he was a fact checker. The unnamed narrator is a fact checker at a magazine. He married an actress. The unnamed narrator married an actress or a model or whatever.
Yeah, model. Yeah, no, it's an interesting style because I think personally, autobiographical novels can really hit or miss. Like the Romantic Cliff is a cool idea, and I mean, we are both authors, so we sit there and we think, gee, write what you know. Who do I know better than me? But the problem is, unless you're a good writer or you live a really interesting life, it just comes off as wank most of the time.
Yeah, it kind of led to a lot of scenes in the book that I felt had no point in being in the book. The scene with the gay guy on the bus, the Tinkerbell with the umbrella.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
I mean, yeah, it was a funny scene with like mild 1980s homophobia. But like, what did it do for the plot? Like, it had no impact whatsoever on the narrator or on his coping or anything. He just watches it happen and speculates about cabbies reselling forgotten umbrellas.
I think that's like the point of the book.
That nothing matters. It's just a big series of events happening as he falls apart and grieving.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I didn't really notice that much in the views, but really stuck out for me is it is New York City. Like this book could not have taken place, for instance, in Tampa. Hell, it couldn't have taken place in Cape Town. I think that's why you have, scenes like Tinkerbell and the umbrella is it's to build the setting of the book and make that into a living, breathing thing, which again is why I think the second person choice is so powerful because it just does fucking drag you in there. You're thinking, yeah, I could be in New York City listening to 80s era homophobia. I'd do that.
It was so weird though, because personally, I've never been to New York City, but I've been to DC. I live outside Detroit. I've been to Chicago and so on. American cities are not that different, but the fact that it takes place in the 80s makes this basically a foreign country, and it was written in the 80s. Yeah, so
this came out in '84, I think.
Yep, there's no cell phones. The media is not like openly political. Like he's portraying work as a fact checker as like honest, like what they all claim to be work, and it's so different from 2022. He basically works for Snopes if Snopes wasn't part of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that was like one of the weirdest things for me because I thought, yeah, okay, I mean, I'm not the smartest individual around. I'm a pretty dumb girl in many respects, but I did not know that was like a thing that you had to do for a magazine. I thought you just wrote stuff, Googled it, and if Google didn't agree with you, it's like, okay, cutting edge journalism. You actually have to call people? Fucking friends?
This predates Google. There was no internet. Like, they were pulling out the Encyclopedia Britannica to check things.
Yeah, no, that was like the weirdest thing for me. This whole magazine industry of this dude fact-checking other people's writing and then saying, that's not true, XYZ. It's surreal.
So what do you think are the odds that the unnamed magazine was literally the New Yorker? Like 99% that it was based at the New Yorker where McInerney worked?
Well, in that sense, I think that on the one hand, I don't read the New Yorker because, we don't get it here. I just read the Bild. But the point is that one thing that really stuck out to me there was the office culture. I have worked in offices. And to see those interesting personality dynamics and those personalities that bounce and play off each other, I found was one of the most actually realistic parts of the book because that was just one-to-one real life. The names changed. And again, knowing it is the New Yorker, it kind of explains why people take fact-checking so seriously. Like millions of people, I'm told, read the New Yorker. One of them will actually, care if they get, the Department of France wrong or something. But what did you think about that?
So I also have never read The New Yorker. I don't think I've ever read a magazine in my life. Like, even when I get trapped in waiting rooms, I don't read magazines. But in the 80s, I'm sure that it was very important. Or at least that's what they say. You know, you still have the vestiges of it, of like CNN is the most trusted name in news, and the reputation keeps them moving.
Yeah, it was like harrowingly reminded me of this because my like one of my many dark secrets is that I play, can never remember it's like visual novels or virtual novels, but like the thing the Japanese invented where you read a book on your laptop with like animations. Those.
VNs. Just call them
I was
VNs.
playing like yeah, I was trying to be cool and remember what it was, and then probably should crack a beer. Anyway, VNs, and I was playing one of the World of Darkness ones, the Shadows of New York, and the main character worked for a magazine she'd been growing up with, and thought it was like the hot shit. It was basically implied to be the Rolling Stone. I just thought that obviously, came out 40 years after Bright Lights Big City. It was just so weird to read that and think that's where they got this entire scene from. It was like bar for bar, rhyme for rhyme, this World of Darkness VN. How Jay McInerney gets fired.
So hold on, there are World of
This has
Darkness
nothing to do with
VNs?
the book itself.
I know
Yes.
World of Darkness was a Western IP.
Yeah, but it's also like an RPG that isn't Dungeons and Dragons, so it means like weebs play it. So you do get VNs of it.
Was it any good?
Oh no, the VNs were shit. Like the actual Vampire the Masquerade VNs they tried to build the franchise around were awful. It's like, granted, I don't like VNs, but I keep playing them because I'm convinced some of them have to be good.
I hear Steins Gate is a good one.
VN. Fate is good if you can tolerate, Fate type moon stuff, but yeah. Yeah, World of Darkness is not the Nasuverse. The Vampire the Masquerade virtual novels. Again, they're fucking set in New York. And like, yeah, New York is cool in media. I would not want to live there ever. Yeah, they capture the vibe. The problem is the vibe is shit and the characters are awful. The art is nice though. But I could also just look at pictures if I wanted to see art.
So,
Two of the choose your own adventure
yeah,
novels.
VNs are supposed to be choose your own adventure, or AKA choose your own waifu ending.
These ones didn't even have waifus.
I've never been able to get into one because I couldn't figure out what. I tried the Steins Gate one, but I couldn't figure out what the choices even were to affect what was going on. But maybe I just didn't.
Yeah, you see, I always play them with the wiki open.
Doesn't that kind of ruin
I
it?
read all the endings beforehand. I mean, like I read books with TV tropes open if they've got TV tropes. It's like I'm reading this to see how can I get the best experience after somebody else has gone to the trouble of having a mediocre experience.
I don't know. I just feel like there are easier ways to get stories. VNs are a weird, like halfway into a video game, halfway a story. I guess I'm not.
It's a
an expert
mindset
at
thing.
them.
Yeah, I've played a couple. I think the best I played was Katawa Shoujo, which I recommend mostly because it's free. Therefore, if it sucks for you, you lost zero money. It's sort of like you have to get the pacing right. And I'm not talking about the pacing of the story here because that's on a case-by-case basis. I mean, the pacing of relevant choices. Because you can figure out the rhythm at which the game plays is quite nice. Because you can sit back and sort of meditate on where you want it to go. Or just check the wiki and prepare for that. Or else you just see a choice, click a random thing, and then it's like 10 minutes of reading, click another random thing, and then your character falls off a building. It's funny once.
I still need to play Doki Doki Literature Club. Isn't that one also free?
Yes, it is free. But it's also not really like...
I'm gonna make a note of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the issue is... It actually reminded me, if anything, of like Madoka Magica, because it is so aggressively anti the medium it's from. Because it's deconstruction. And it's also like one of the first deconstruction of the genre. Because, like Madoka, it was the first VN that said, we're in a VN and that's weird. Let's get really dark and edgy about this. And yeah, it was good. But it's also like, it's a terrible introduction to the genre because everything else plays it straight. Or at least, everything else before Doki Doki plays being a VN straight as far as I know or care.
Alright, so speaking of things that I say I'm going to do and that haven't gotten around to doing, I also need to read American Psycho. And I believe you have read American Psycho?
I have. It's one of the books I will only recommend you read if you actually like Bret Easton Ellis's work, or you plan to do something with the knowledge. Like, don't read American Psycho just to read American Psycho. It's actually a fucking slog.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Good movie, though.
Yeah, no, the movie is phenomenal. But the problem is, the movie is the best bits. There's a lot of random shit in the book that builds, the atmosphere of the book. But it's stuff like Patrick Bateman will rant for an entire chapter around the history of a major pop artist. It's basically the Wikipedia page into the book about like Pink, about Adele. I don't think Adele was around during American Psycho when it was written, but it's like those people of today, like Huey Lewis in the News. That 5-minute iconic scene is 2 chapters in the book. Just one chapter is solidly background in Huey Lewis. And the violence, I mean, I like violence. I've committed plenty of violence, but it's gratuitous to the extreme in the book. It's like it loses its shock value. It's so intense. So it's like just shoving gerbils into people after a while. He sort of runs out of ideas.
So I brought that up because the entire time I was listening to the audiobook of Bright Lights Big City, it felt like this was the primer material to American Psycho. Because my entire exposure to American Psycho is the movie.
Yeah.
And like even you pull up the Wikipedia pages and they're like, yeah, they're sharing characters because they're writing basically the same stuff.
Yes.
And I had this feeling the entire time as they're talking about Bolivian marching soldiers, cocaine through his nose, that there was just like a slightly bigger, more complete version called American Psycho. But from what you're saying, you sound like you actually prefer Bright Lights Big City to American Psycho by a fair margin.
I do. It's like, I personally think that BE is a slightly better writer, but the issue is that American Psycho it's a classic. And in that sense, I'd say, it's like Dracula, it's like Frankenstein, it's like what Charles Dickens writes. It's fundamental for literature in the Western world as we have it today, and literature would be more shit if we didn't have this. But the problem is, it laid so much the groundwork for everything else that comes after it that it feels really basic to read, because other people then have gone and refined what was happening in the book. Yeah, basically also the thing with American Psycho is that it's like 700 pages long. So...
Oh, fucking God, are you serious?
Yes. It's like 700 pages of Bright Lights Big City, a really hilarious serial killer, misogyny, because it's chudcore, racism, and then just like 300 pages of Bateman spurging out about the most basic level of pop culture imaginable and doing like Serbian film level violence.
Oh, I think you posted a link to an interview with the author, the director, and Patrick Bateman from like 2002 or something. And the author was talking about how like everyone remembers the violence, but there's almost no violence in American Psycho at all, according to him.
Oh, I mean, the thing is, with that, a big part of American Psycho is the fact that Bateman is a psycho. And not just, psycho as in he's a psychopath, which he is, but psychotic, in which he's literally insane, having hallucinations. So, a major theory that a lot of people have in the book is that he's hallucinating violence, that he's just fantasizing about it. He's just sitting in his room and whacking off to thoughts of, ripping people's spines out. And that there's very little violence in the book because Bateman never really actually kills anyone. He's just a yuppie. It's kind of fucked up. I don't agree with the interpretation, but that's why you say, a lot of people say there's no real violence in the book, it's all fantasy. But no, the book is pretty explicit.
So, the unnamed narrator of Bright Lights Big City spends fairly, like, compared to the other scenes, fairly big chunks confused. Particularly when it comes to him trying to place, like, what actually happened with Amanda. I was waiting for, like, the penny to drop, and then he hits you out of left field with a reveal about, like, why he's going into a grief spiral, which I almost don't want to spoil. But we should probably just spoil it, because it's a 40-year-old book at this point.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So, in the very end of the book, his brother shows up, and he finally basically explains, like, the one big character moment where you get sympathy for the guy, in my opinion, is the discussions he had with his mother, and the explanation of why he started doing cocaine was because she was on cocaine, on having these like extremely forced, intimate, like she's dying of cancer and she knows that she doesn't have the rest of a normal life to be with her sons. And
Yes.
that was like the best part of the book in my opinion.
Yeah, that hit hardest.
And that's what the whole thing built up.
Yeah, no, yeah, that the whole explanation of why is the narrator so fucked up, I thought was extremely well executed and was definitely McInerney pulled on the heartstrings once, and it worked fantastically. It's like my parents are alive, but even I almost teared up a little, thinking, "Shit, man, that's hardcore. That is death."
By the way, great brother portrayal. Get in a fight, punch the shit out of each other, knock them out. 5 minutes later, they're just talking it out.
Yeah, I never had that. With me and my brother, it was always, we do the whole fight thing. Sometimes we just pulled knives or swords, and escalated it intentionally, but we never actually talked anything out.
I mean, I don't get in physical fights with my siblings, so I can't say that I've ever been in that particular situation. I just appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that portrayal is accurate. I'm just saying, like, personally, I'm not sure if the talking out over it is accurate, because we just sort of just nod to each other now. He's like, "Hey, bro, hey, LA," then just walk off.
Well, on the other hand, you're probably not dealing with the fact that your mother died and you developed a cocaine addiction and your wife left you and you just got fired from your job
Yeah, I know there is that. I'm just an alcoholic currently.
and associated with some very disturbing frats.
Yeah, just all right. I have questionable taste in associates, but South Africa has freedom of association. They can judge but not convict you. So yeah, I mean, I overall enjoyed the characterization, and I thought the Tad Allegheny character was one of the strongest overall. Because now that was a guy
I
living
think
the life.
everyone who's been drinking to 6 in the morning in a city knows Tad.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure every single person knows their version of Tad.
yeah. No, I saw Tad last week invite me over to chill with him in a pub. His girlfriend turns up halfway over. He's trying to remember what my name was, because I told him it was Hebrew and he believed me. And it's like, wow, your name's Hebrew. It's like, wow, that's cool. So is it like El Hey? And I'm thinking, I won't ever see you again, so yes. And he goes on, he tells his friend, "Hey, this is El Hey. She's in, what are you in? Research. Research." And then his girlfriend turns over and they have this huge fight. She throws a pint of beer on him. And so he just picks up the pint and breaks it over her head. Yep, that's Tad. Hilarious. He was thrown out of the bus so quickly.
Yeah, so my version of Ted one time got me into the VIP area of my local downtown's club, which had been bought out by his cocaine dealer.
Right.
And I was just like, this is incredibly uncomfortable for me. But it was also like bring over every single bottle of liquor you have kind of party, because I got a first-hand look at truly self-destructive people for one evening. And when I was reading all the party scenes in Bright Lights Big City, I was just like, yep, yeah, I can see, I know this. I've seen this in people. These people are in a dangerous spot right now.
Yeah, no, there's nothing self-destructive like drinking hard spirits like beer. I've done that, but you do that like once a month. I think funneling Jack Daniels was the worst. They have funnels in the States.
Why would you do that?
Like, okay, it wasn't a funnel. It
How
was
drunk were you that you thought that was a good idea?
I was sober.
How did you not vomit?
Made of tough stuff.
I feel like my stomach would just be hit with such a shock from that much liquor that it would eject.
So, I just finished, I have no idea what I just finished doing, but it was a harrowing experience. And so I'm wandering around Pretoria, as you do, and eventually I get into this house party, and I grew up in Kenya, and this one dude is determined to hunt on every continent of the planet, including Antarctica, like just spear a penguin. And so he's saying, "Wow, LA, you're from Africa." He's from like South Africa. That's not Africa. Saying, "Oh shit, can you hunt in Kenya?" And I say, "No, idiot, it's illegal." I say, "Really?" I mean, I know a guy. I say because I do. He says, "Awesome. Give me his contact details, and I will give you a bottle of Jack Daniels. And I say, hundreds, cool. And so now I'm thinking with this bottle of Jack, and I don't have 0 Coke and 0 ice. Like, how am I going to get rid of this? Because they're probably not going to let me take it home with me. So I say, dude, are we going to funnel? And he says, yeah, bro, let's funnel. What you got to funnel? I say, I've got a bottle of Jack Daniels. And so it's not a real funnel. It's a rain gauge duct taped to a garden hose. And I remember nothing the rest of the week.
The rest of the week? You stayed drunk for a week?
I think I stayed drunk for a good 2 days. I was mentally crippled by the hangover for the rest of the week.
You know what? Respect. Was this videotaped or photographed at all? Or you just know it happened and you leave the memories in the past?
I have testimony from multiple people saying it happens, and I've seen the same funnel. Pointed it out to a guy and said, was that the one where I? And he just said, yeah, it was. I don't take photos of this stuff because that's the sort of thing that will get you arrested. Not this specifically, but like definitely the stuff on beer. Anyway, back to the book. One other thing I found was, pretty interesting with it was the ferret. That was ridiculous.
So was it a ferret or was it a mink? Or does it not matter because it's whatever the fact checkers say it was?
What's the difference between a weasel and a stoat?
Good question.
Well, weasels are weaselly recognized, but stoats are stoatally different. I have no idea what the carnivorous beast in the book actually was, though.
According to Google, the difference is the length of the tail. So I think that comes down to no one actually knows what the hell it was, and it's just people interpreting the events.
Yeah, I mean, those things are vicious. Yeah, how are you going to hold it down and measure its tail? For context, it is after the unnamed narrator, who is actually just Jay McInerney, gets fired from the New Yorker. He breaks back to the office with Tad Allegheny and this weasel animal he bought from the side of the street when he runs into this guy selling weasels. Funny story about that.
As one does. This is a perfectly common occurrence in New York.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I bought fake watches. Not granted from the side of the street since I have standards, but yeah, I also buy a fake Cartier from the side of the street. I'm going to get a fake Cartier for myself, actually. Anyway, so he takes this weasel, which he has forced into the suitcase against its will, as one does with weasels, and releases it in the office of the lady who fired him. And the thing fucking goes berserk and immediately maims him and Tad. Nearly bites his penis off, which is always hilarious. And so while they're trying to quell the beast into only shitting on her desk and not ransacking the entire New Yorker office, the unnamed narrator's mentor walks in, who's like this washed-up Ernest Hemingway type from 1930 when men were men, women were women, and small furred animals had a uniform tail length. And Ernest Hemingway guy is really drunk, so the weasel smells like his blood alcohol percentage and attacks him, which causes him to pass out and have a stroke or something. A bookcase falls down, and Tad, unnamed narrator, just look at each other and scram. And like for the rest of the book, the guy's he doesn't have rabies, but like his hand is visibly infected.
So one of the things that stuck out to me with that scene was breaking into the office was not breaking into anything. They seemed to just walk in. Was that just me? Was that just me missing stuff because I was listening to an Edward Norton knockoff narrate the book?
No, I'm pretty confident basically he just walked in because like the thing was he still had like membership there or he had a key card, so nobody was really prepared for him to, well, most people didn't know he was fired. So nobody was really prepared for him to go on a rampage of revenge like the day he was fired. So it wasn't really breaking in. Legally, yes, but practically, it just walked in there.
Yeah, so this is before key cards. Like there's no digital locks on doors, so I would assume that it's either manually locked, and they tell these people, hey, it's 8 p.m. Get the fuck out, or there's a doorman security. But no, apparently the Glorious magazine. You just have to know how to open the door, and you get to walk in and look through everyone's files if you feel like it, and leave a rabid weasel in someone's office. Which maybe that's completely accurate. That's just a 1980s thing.
Yeah, because, I mean, it said like they only closed at 2 a.m. because these are writers they're working with. So yeah, dude just walked in and said, doorman, I'm doing work. I'm not fired. Releases a rabid weasel in somebody's office.
Now, as ways of getting even with someone, I got some respect for dumping a rabid weasel in their office.
Yeah, that'll do
Got
it.
some style.
It's got taste. It's using the city to your advantage.
How are they ever going to track that back to you? You bought it off a random guy on the street corner.
Yeah, I don't have security cameras. It's the 80s. Terrorism hadn't been invented yet.
You know what? That reminds me of something. There were no shootings at any point. Was New York safe in the 80s?
Uh, no, I don't think so. I think it got banned in the 90s and then the Republicans fixed it or something. But
New York has
yeah,
had tons of ups and downs.
I also think it's like stressed in the book that Jay, the unnamed narrator, only really hangs around like the high class parts of New York City. He doesn't really go into the low life places often. So I don't think he's in the part of town where people get shot.
Counterpoint, he's doing imported cocaine cut with borax.
Fair enough.
Like, I think he is in shitty parts of the city. Like, yeah, cocaine was a trendy drug at the time, but was it that trendy? When you're stumbling around at 6 a.m., are you really not in the bad side of town?
Well, he's in like the Heartbreak Hotel and the Lizard Lounge. These are like in real life decent places.
For the record, the 80s seems to have been a spike in violent crime in New York City, if this random Google search is anything to go by.
Well, I guess he just got lucky, or it's too hard to notice.
Unfortunately, this isn't something I can just rattle off facts
Another
about.
weird thing I noticed here is Tab. They're drinking Tab all the time. Have you ever had a Tab?
No.
I have. They kept selling them in South Africa until like 2017.
So what is it?
Diet Coke. It's just Diet Coke. But like with aspartame instead of xylitol. That's literally what it is. Coke bought Tab and produced it randomly in South Africa, internally competing with Coke Light and Coke Zero for decades. It was trendy because it was like a way to drink Coke without getting fat.
Did it taste good? Because you presumably had Tab then.
Yeah, no, I drank it while it was around because the problem is that South African Coke uses real sugar. It gives it a very unpleasant texture on the teeth. So you have to typically water it down with brandy. But no, I've had Tab, and frankly, it's not actually very nice. It's like Coke Zero, but slightly, but noticeably worse.
Coke Zero is the worst version, though. Now, I like Diet Coke. I can't drink Coke Zero.
Look, we don't get Diet Coke in SA. We used to get Coke Light, but that was discontinued at the same time as Tab, so it's either Coke or Coke Zero.
I'm sorry to hear that. You're very deprived of the best mixed drink component.
Yeah, we don't even have like corn syrup Coke. It's the sugar shit. It's terrible.
Hey, well, now we pay a premium to get throwback soda in America. Okay, thank you. To get actual sugar soft drinks in America is quite difficult because we have all these corn subsidies.
Look, SA has corn subsidies. We just haven't figured out how to put it in drinks yet because we keep grinding it up and eating the flour. Well, granted, we cook it first, but yeah, this is why I've taken to drinking things that don't have Coke as a mixer. Do you get R&R?
I don't know. All this fucking Coke. Be right back. I'm getting a glass of Coke.
Advertising.
And I'm back. I had a 2 liter because last night I was drinking rum and cokes while watching anime.
Nice. Yeah, I was drinking Budweiser while reading hentai, so it balances out.
Oh yeah, as one does.
I'll crack the last of the buds right now. I was working on a paper last night, and I was like,
Do you get Coors in South Africa?
we do not get Coors in South Africa.
So all lager tastes the same, pretty much.
Like objectively.
But Coors is my piss water of choice. Because that's from Colorado, which is where the best skiing and snowboarding is.
Right.
But Coors is at least popular across America. There is a Canadian equivalent that you can only get over at like Vancouver, like near Alaska, and I got a taste of kokanee, which is just Canadian piss water. There's nothing special about it. But because I'm on the wrong side of the goddamn continent, it's impossible to get any. I would literally have to go back to Whistler Blackcomb to get another drink of kokanee, and that kind of drives me nuts.
Well then, that's kind of fucked up, man. You know what's weird in SA? So, I mean, Bud is my piss water of choice because it tastes the most generic. So if you have to drink something else, everything sort of tastes like Bud.
Fair enough.
It is brewed in South Africa by the alcohol monopoly, SAB, which stands for South African Breweries, because the people who live on the southernmost point of Africa are creative with names. And they brew it on contract from whoever owns Budweiser. Nobody in SA knows this. They are convinced that it is imported from America and costs twice as much. Like, Heineken.
Ugh. The value of labels and signs.
So instead, people drink Canadian lager here, Black Label, which is coincidentally also brewed by SAB, which they are convinced is a genuinely South African product. The difference, as far as I can tell, is that Bud has a white label and, Black Label's label is kind of obvious.
Well, you know what happened to Pabst Blue Ribbon, don't you? PBR.
Don't they still make that?
You can still get PBR. Yeah, absolutely. But everyone thinks it's like an American brand. It's owned by Russians.
That explains a lot.
It's pretty good. It's kind of like too sweet though, but it's cheaper, so it balances out.
Definitely owned by Russians. Now, I'm not sure what the stereotype is on your side, but here, like, PBR is one of the few foreign beers to have one, and it's like, it is a dad drink, but it's something you exclusively crack open on Friday afternoons to watch the sun go down, or it's something you buy a keg of and then break your arms while doing a keg stand.
Go on. Who broke their arm?
No, this is a reference to the extremely popular sitcom Community, in which the Childish Gambino character did that and broke his arms. In continuity, he didn't break his arms in real life.
Yeah, I gotcha. I confess that while I've watched the majority of Community episodes, because it's that kind of sitcom, I never see it in order, so I've missed a lot of episodes, that being one of them.
I mean, I watched it, but the problem is, I also study theology, so it got me really mad when they did all, like, the religious depictions wrong. Like, I know people don't actually follow religions 100% in real life, but it pissed me off when the media didn't do their research.
Wow, the media not getting facts right. Could you imagine
Well,
that?
look, clearly...
They would have to publish retractions.
No, look, clearly we see in Bright Lights, Big City, the episode that what we're technically doing this podcast on, fact checkers are all incompetent crackheads, so clearly we do not have accurate fact representation. Curiously, SAB also makes Flying Fish, which is SA's favorite flavored beer. It is terrible.
It's called a Flying Fish?
Yes. It's like...
I mean, like, is it an IPA or something? What is it flavored as?
Well, it's not technically beer. It's actually the same stuff as, the Smirnoff coolers. It's like grain alcohol that's been watered down. You get, like, two major flavors, apple and lemon. The lemon tastes like a really awful Radler. The apple tastes exactly the same coming in as it does coming out of any orifice.
Oh, jeez, fuck. You didn't even have to describe that. I could already taste it as soon as you said it was apple flavored. Like, I like cider. You don't really describe cider as having an apple flavor. You call it as having a cider flavor.
Yeah, it tastes like
and you
stuff.
talk about how wet or dry it is. Whenever they put in, 3 drops of Chemical 33 apple flavoring or whatever the hell it is, you know it's bad.
Precisely. It's like, I've met people whose favorite beer, quote-unquote beer product, is Flying Fish. And they're all planning to quit their jobs, but they can never get around to it for some reason. That was one thing I was kind of disappointed by in the book, actually, is they didn't, like, go through an 80s era list of what people were drinking at the time. I used to be a bartender, and I sort of care about this. Like accuracy. So, people drink tab, and that's it. They drink unnamed substances.
I kind of got the impression that the narrator never paid attention to what he was drinking. Because, if someone buys a round, you don't complain about what round they bought, you just imbibe it.
Fair enough. I actually did have somebody complain about a round I bought, but granted, it was flavored vodka.
Depends on the flavoring.
It was lemon flavored vodka. In my defense, they were out of generic vodka shots because they were out of vodka. Not sure how a nightclub exactly gets out of vodka, but And they were also expecting tequila, which nearly killed one of the other women who imbibed it because she was expecting, oh, this will be a nice Jose Cuervo. Sledgehammer lemon vodka, baby. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing I found in the book was this guy gets laid significantly less than you would think.
Yeah, he kind of does. He misses out basically every single time, doesn't he?
Yeah,
For the amount of he can just apparently show up and hit it off with someone and then it doesn't go anywhere. First of all, kind of painful. Like I can sympathize with that. But it's just all part of him circling the drain.
yeah. It's like, can't even get his dick wet. You know things are bad for this guy.
That does remind me though, the cousin whose name eludes me, but the girl that he likes and he actually avoids doing drugs with.
Yes, the one that's studying philosophy ostensibly.
Yes. That was the most like sympathetic moment prior to the mother when he looks at her and goes, "Oh, she's really attractive. Oh, she's reading Spinoza. This girl's interesting. Oh my god, I don't remember a single thing about Spinoza."
Yeah. I know just enough about Spinoza.
I too have read Spinoza. I don't remember a damn thing about him, though.
Yeah, and I didn't read it, but I watched a couple of YouTube videos and listened to one professor who later turned out to be a wizard rant about it. So, I mean, I'm qualified to pretend that I know who Spinoza is. I also thought, like, why fucking Spinoza? Yeah, he was controversial.
I'm telling you that he literally met someone at a bar and hit it off with them, and she was reading Spinoza.
Yeah.
These are not fabricated events.
No, that was like a slash lit moment, actually. I don't know if you noticed, but it was like this post in slash lit the other day. I think it's still there, where this dude is trying to hook up with a woman, and she's like, "Oh, I read. I'm one of those art ho women, but books instead of art." He's like, "Wow, that's cool. I've just been reading Monogatari for the past 2 years." So she's like, "Oh, what do you read, Anon?" He's like, I start with the Greeks. I just finished Euthyphro by whoever wrote Euthyphro." And she's like, "Wow, cool. What did you think of the ending?" And Anon is, of course, portraying this as like she's grilling him, like reverse fake gamer girling this guy to see if he actually read the book. And like, yep, exact same situation.
Dude, I cannot tell you how many books I've read and then forgotten what they are.
Yeah. I know. When people just say books, I automatically just say I've read it, regardless of whether I've actually read it or not. Because I might have.
Based.
Yeah. And if I haven't...
Has that ever backfired?
Excuse me?
Has that ever backfired on you?
Frequently.
Okay, maybe you should stop doing that then.
Look, if I learn from my mistakes, the mistakes win.
I got a question for you to help us both chill a bit. Just because you're a published author, and I'm sure you tell people that you're a published author.
Yes, of course. I was telling people today I was a published author.
If someone you meet asks you for a book recommendation, do you recommend your book or do you choose something that you think is better than your own writing?
I recommend 3 books, 2 of which are not mine. It's like they come up to me and say, "Hey, LA, you're literate. Recommend me a book." It's like, okay, what do you want to read? It's like, I want to get into reading, or I like sci-fi, or I like books with female protagonists. Say, well, if you like books with female protagonists, shit, man. There's Madame Bovary, there's Sociopath Prima Donna Girl, there's The Handmaid's Tale. You got your pick, but those are like my top 3 real influential novels. Just slide it in there.
Yeah, I can see that working for you at some point, if they recognize that the middle one is yours.
Yeah, it works here and there. I'm not shy about the fact that I also write these things. It's like, it's almost, become a bit of a meme now to say, I mean, obviously I will recommend you my own things, buy money. But also, here are other things that are also good, people say.
I'm much more shameless, so I'll just be like, so there's this great book. It's about a cyberpunk detective. It's called Faceless by James Krake. However, aside from the fact I'm shilling my own thing to you, here's Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Is probably the best book I've ever read.
Yeah, that was a pretty good book, actually.
I need to reread it, because now that I've read more, I need to go back and appreciate how much better it is than everything else in the market.
Yeah, it was really phenomenal. It's like, I was so surprised that he also wrote other stuff. Because, like, he wrote Song of Kali. I thought, how would you write a really 3 out of 5 stars horror novel, which is like the Heart of Darkness, but in India, and then you write Hyperion, no breaks. It's like Ian Banks alternating between writing like the fucking Wasp Factory and writing culture series books. Inexplicable.
Is there a single kind of person you would recommend Bright Lights Big City to? Because this did not come across as a book that I'd actually talk to a person IRL about.
Yeah,
It's short, pleasant, if you're not huge into reading, I can't imagine many people are going to like the book.
no, it's like it's a book, but it's also like the thing is, I'd say just read Less Than Zero if you want this book, but better.
What is Less Than Zero? Because I know nothing about this. I read this book on your recommendation, so I'm wondering why you recommended the shitty version of another book.
Well, because Less Than Zero has significantly more idiots on YouTube talking about it than this one does. So,
Punishing me for content. Got it.
just like last time.
Jesus. You know what? I brought the last one on myself. I thought that this big famous book would actually be good.
No, it wasn't. We spent a whole podcast episode shitting on it.
I still run into people that are like, oh my god, the physics in Three Body Problem are so mind-blowing. I talk to like physicists and they're like, how did this guy do this? Like, it's so bad.
Look, I dropped out of high school, so I have no idea whether the physics are accurate. But, I mean, okay, Less Than Zero is Bret Easton Ellis' first novel. It's like the American Psycho guy breakout novel. It's not American Psycho, it's Less Than Zero. It's basically the 80s. It's this book, written in probably the first person, if I remember correctly. And it's about the same guy, essentially, but 5 years before this. So it's like college sophomore, this book. And it's a lot more interesting, not necessarily because sophomore life in college is interesting, it's not, but because the whole debauchery and degeneracy of the 80s hits a lot closer to home with people slightly out of high school or in high school than it does with the people you actually expect to be debauched. Also had this whole horror mystery arc going around with the violence in California slowly amplifying and feeding into the guy's derangement, which was very interesting. We can do that next time, I guess.
Sure, eventually. Just downloading a Canticle for Leibowitz, and that's what I want to read next.
Okay, that's a book. I know a guy who hates it, like aggressively, will rant about how much he dislikes Canticle for Leibowitz. Fascinating man. I will do his books on the podcast as soon as I actually finish reading the ones that aren't his autobiography.
Speaking of reading books for the podcast, I do have Sociopath. It is in my giant pile of books to read.
Yeah, I got the payment for that. I drank it.
Oh, like $1? That was your royalty for that?
Yeah, I got like $2, which is 2 beers in South Africa. And I thought, oh gee, I've got to go. I sold another copy. I've got to go and celebrate. Yeah.
Dude, it costs like $10 to get a beer at a bar here.
Yeah, no. 1, I am not drinking at good bars. 2, I'm drinking during happy hour. So yeah, literally $2 American will buy you 2 beers in South Africa. Black labels, granted, but so I went out to celebrate, had 2 beers, and I thought, awesome. Now that I've established my presence in this drink establishment, there's party. Fuck, I just drank the royalties.
So, you know what book you might enjoy is Hemingway's Immaculate Feast? Because apparently, like, half of it is just explaining all the drinks that they're having.
I will remember that. I thought you were going to recommend me Faceless by James Krake, actually.
Well, you should. I've already recommended that to you, and you know that you're already supposed to be reading that. At this rate, my second book, Ship of Fools, is going to be released before you get around to it.
Yeah, maybe when I pass my exams and I have time to like actually learn how to audio edit properly instead of fucking around on Audacity, I will actually read Faceless. I recommended it to somebody else, but he didn't buy it, and we share a Kindle account, so I was trying to get a free copy of him. I think it's his bank account still attached to the Kindle account. Let me check that quickly. There it is. Expect like $2 soon, bro. So yeah, I mean,
The ebook is $3 and maybe slightly cheaper overseas.
well, there isn't a South African Kindle store, so I'm just gonna have to pay dollars anyway.
All right. So any closing statements at this point?
Well, I mean, closing statements, Bright Lights, Big City. It's a fun book. It generates pleasant conversation. I mean, I have zero idea who I'd actually recommend this to.
I think it's a good book for finding out who actually goes to clubs.
Yeah, I mean, not just like who goes clubbing, but who goes to clubs, capital letters. Yeah, I'd say definitely that. I mean, if you're interested in the culture of yuppies, yes. If you're interested in what yuppies are today, this is still helpful. And I mean, if you like chudcore, which is the term I've coined for, well, books about men who hate women, which isn't actually applicable in this case, but it's applicable in Zeitgeist. Read this. If you are this person and you can read this book. It'll give you some helpful pointers on how to not die.
If you are this person, the book will read like a personal attack.
It was when I read it. Because I read it on a plane flight to Dubai. I was just reading this like, wait a minute. I've done most of this stuff and it is not flatteringly depicted here. Yeah, it's a fun experience being called out this hard.
And it's a short book. I think there's a lot of merit to short books that give you, here it is, I'm not going to waste your time. Even though sometimes scenes are a complete waste of time.
Yeah, it's got weird scenes, but it's got energy the whole way through. It's like the book goes exactly as long as it has to.
I agree with that.
So yeah, closing thoughts on your side?
I'm really surprised that at no point did someone get in a drunken fight in the parking lot outside one of the bars and the police had to show up while he's sitting there having a breakdown trying to not show that he's high on Bolivian cocaine. I think that scene would have fit right in. I was waiting the entire book for it, but, you know.
I have been in that exact scene. I was there. Granted, I wasn't the one on Bolivian cocaine, but yeah, I was definitely in the knife fight. I'm so disappointed that of the few people who've actually read this book, I can say, do you want to know how I live? Bright light, big city. If I have a better job and more cocaine.
He never had enough cocaine, now did he?
I think that's the thing with cocaine.
No amount of it is enough of it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, my best friend's ex-girlfriend actually quit cocaine. And you know what her entire reasoning was? It's getting really addictive.
All right, so this conversation has completely destroyed my voice. I blame the rum and cokes from last night. So, anyone that is still on this podcast listening to my horrid, scratchy voice, thank you for sitting through it.
So yeah, and I mean, as always, thanks for coming on. I've been Labuschagne. I have switched from chai tea to Budweiser, and the night is improving significantly. He's James Krake. He's written Faceless. He's written web novels. He's a quote-unquote regular on this. And yeah, I mean, until next time. If your brain is comprised entirely of Bolivian soldiers, they are hot, they are tired, there are holes in their shoes, you need one thing. Bolivian marching powder and more episodes of the Unreal podcast coming soon. Good night.
I may have gone too far in a few places.